We have a strong and resilient economy.
The striking labor market report that we got on Friday obviously punctuated a historically strong period in the labor market recovery.
Last month, we created over 500,000 jobs, more than 12 million since the president took office.
We're seeing inflation moderate.
What I see is a path in which inflation is declining significantly and the economy is remaining strong.
Fresh tensions with China and a showdown on Capitol Hill looming over President Biden's State of the Union address. Speaker McCarthy calling the president to the negotiating table ahead of his big night.
Mr. President, it's time to get to work. The problem only gets solved when both parties come to the table. No drawing lines in the sand, no policy gimmicks or political games. We can have reckless spending or we can have responsibility.
This coming as the president looks to renew his proposal for a billionaire tax. A White House preview of the speech reading, quote, "This minimum tax would make sure that the wealthiest Americans no longer pay a tax rate lower than teachers and firefighters." For more down in Washington, here's Bloomberg's Annmaire. Annmaire, let's start with what's possible in this address later.
Well, not much when it comes to a billionaire's tax, Jonathan, or as well as quadrupling the excise tax on share buybacks. Remember, in the IRA, they were able to get a 1%, but many Democrats say that is just not high enough on these corporations. The issue is the president is facing a divided Congress. So a lot of this legislation he may want to pitch just has no legs in Congress right now. But the economy will be front and center. That is what Brian Deese told us yesterday in this speech. The president was given a gift on Friday as he walks into this speech. He can claim that under him being president, it is the lowest unemployment rate since 1969. He was 26, 27 years old, John, when we saw an unemployment rate this low. He is now 80 years old. The issue the president has is his polling numbers. The American people don't feel the economy that he is talking about, and that is a difficult position for him as he faces, one, a divided Congress, and also as he plans to announce a 2024 bid.
Just on the debt ceiling debate, there's a passage in this fact sheet the White House put out yesterday. It reads as follows. President Biden's predecessor passed the nearly $2 trillion unpaid for tax cut with benefits skewed to the wealthy and large corporations. And the deficit, and I think this is the key line, Annmaire, the deficit went up every single year under his watch. Do you expect that to be mentioned a few times later?
Absolutely. The debt ceiling is going to be looming large, and also they want to make sure that they are precisely pointing out the timeline of the debt ceiling. Republicans would like to say this has to do with Democratic spending. They don't want to talk about these tax cuts under the Trump administration, which we should know, Jonathan, many of those tax cuts still remain in place, even though last year there was a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and obviously a president from the Democratic Party. One key issue, though, is Speaker McCarthy yesterday, and you played some of that sound. He was speaking on the Capitol. He said there should be no lines drawn. But an hour later, a reporter asked him, when you want to decrease the deficit, would you consider tax hikes? He said, no, we will not. So in a sense, a line was already drawn by the Republicans. So this is going to be a showdown early this summer. There
is a spot where Republicans and Democrats might agree. China might be one issue. Here's another.
Yes.
And it might be connected to that China issue as well, that the Europeans have got a voice on this too. The administration is issuing proposed guidance to, quote, ensure construction materials from copper and aluminum to fiber optic cable, lumber and drywall are made in America. Annmaire, can something be done there? And what will the Europeans say about it?
So two things on this. One, it'll be hard to hear Republicans say they don't agree with that. Already the administration is trying to do this with the Inflation Reduction Act. If you want to get some of those subsidies and tax credits, they want these products built in America, but also critically the raw materials coming from America. This is where the Europeans think they could potentially make a play into getting involved in the IRA. And I spoke to Robert Habeck yesterday, the Vice Chancellor of Germany. He's the economy minister. And this would be a club, Jonathan, of sorts, a raw materials club. What's interesting, though, is that if you try to do this, it could potentially be a big hurdle for companies. Raw materials like aluminum, like copper, we saw this in the oil market, these are priced on a global commodity market, right? And some of the cheapest products are coming from China or coming from Russia. But potentially the president is going to be leaning into this a little bit more this week or last week. We talked about this yesterday. They're looking at a 200% tariff on aluminum for Russia, which basically means that any Russian aluminum will not be making its way to the U.S.
MH, thank you.